It always snows at Foxcroft. A Very Fatal Christmas by Celia Kay. Part 5. Christmas Morning. The hours after Minerva Audley's murder dripped by a second at a time. Sims, the driver, had asked to see the body, though for what reason I didn't know. Gifford and Elverton had accompanied him, and I had tagged behind, keen to get away from the slightly too hysterical sobs of Beatrice. Sims had stood in Minerva's doorway and twitched his head back and forth as he took in the scene of the murder. His eyes became intensely alert, youthful and alive as he gazed at the corpse. It was unsettling. I couldn't be sure if he was assessing the scene in a professional manner, or if he was, and I shuddered to think it, enjoying himself. Vernier had tried to suggest we stay together until the police arrived, but Mrs. Brindle had picked up a bottle of cherry brandy and announced she would be in the kitchen with the carving knife close to hand. Guy Elverton insisted that the rest of us return to our rooms and lock the doors. Strangely, we had all deferred to him rather than Vernier. I, for one, was glad to be locked within my room. I didn't fancy making polite conversation with a killer amongst the Christmas decorations. As it was, Sims had seemingly fixed the fuse in my bedside lamp. I had a good book to read, and the lock on my door was made of sturdy English iron. I got dressed again, switched on the lamp, and banked the fire up, dragging the chair round so that I had a view of the door and the window. The latch was still missing its ribbon, and the idea that someone could shin up the drainpipe whilst I slept did not appeal to me. In the end, I sacrificed a stocking, winding it round the latch tightly in a figure of 8. Outside, the world was eerily silent, though I don't think my nerves would have stood it had a fox screamed. The snow still fell, turning the trees and shrubs into vague, pale monsters in the inky blackness. I closed the curtains and, fetching my book, took my place beside the fire. The new Agatha Christie, A Pocketful of Rye, had been my Christmas treat to myself, but it now felt a poor companion given the night's events. Instead, I turned my mind to the other occupants of Foxcroft Hall. Every one, except Guy Elverton, had known my aunt. Was one of them the real culprit during the war, knowing she had been falsely imprisoned? And had Minerva Audley's clumsy attempt at blackmail netted her a bigger fish than she'd expected? With a shiver, I reached across to the bed and tugged at the eiderdown, dragging it off and wrapping it round my knees. My eye drifted to the bedside table, and I caught sight of the playing card I'd found beside my bed. The 5 of hearts, marked, I know. Whose card was that? And what was it doing in my room? Did it mean the murderer was one of us playing cards? That excluded Sims and Mrs. Brindle, if so. Or had the murderer heard Minerva Audley's hints about the war and decided to kill her anyway? I must have fallen asleep, for I awoke with a start to find the room in blackness. The fire was reduced to embers and the lamp off. An icy blast of air swept across my face as I turned towards the window. It was wide open. For a moment, I was enveloped in panic, and then I heaved a sigh of relief. The stocking must have worked loose, and snow blown onto the bedside lamp, blowing the fuse again. Jumping up, I crossed to the window. The stocking wasn't on the latch, nor was it on the floor beneath the window. With a shaking hand, I reached for the lamp and fumbled for the switch. It came on immediately. Someone had unlatched the window and switched off the lamp. The hairs on the back of my neck leapt up and I spun round. The door was ajar. I was about to shout for help when there was a crash from downstairs. I was halfway down the landing when I stopped and ran back to my room. If there was murder afoot, I would need a weapon, and I grabbed the poker from the fireplace. "What's going on?" Guy Elverton appeared from a door further along the landing. "Did you hear it?" I asked, as he switched the landing light on. "I think it came from the library." He grabbed hold of my sleeve. "You'd better go back to your room." Not likely. Someone came in when I was asleep and opened the window." I shrugged him off and ran down the stairs. Trevor Lawton and Monsieur Vernier were ahead, and I pulled myself up sharply. So sharply that Guy bumped into me. "Look," I hissed, and pointed to Vernier. He caught me watching him, and quickly tucked something into his jacket pocket. "What?" asked Guy. "No, nothing," I whispered. "I'll tell you later." Vernier had pocketed something that looked like a knife, but I hadn't been able to tell. Long and thin, a stiletto, I think they're called. It had flashed in the lamplight for the briefest of seconds. "Not there," I shouted as Lawton went to the drawing room. "It came from beneath my room, in the library." Guy pushed past me and rattled the library door handle. The door swung open. The room was dark and full of shadow, save for the fairy lights. The Christmas tree had toppled over. Broken ornaments covered the rug, their sharp glass shards lying in wait for unwary bare feet. "Oh, thank goodness." Beatrice Lawton gathered her silk dressing gown to her neck. "I thought someone else, you know. I can't take any more surprises tonight. I simply can't." She turned on her heel and ran up the stairs. "The tree has fallen over, that is all," announced Monsieur Vernier. "We can all return to our rooms." "I wouldn't be too sure about that," replied Guy grimly, and he pushed his way past Vernier. His shoes crunched the broken glass into the carpet as he lifted the fallen tree to one side. Ambrose Gifford lay sprawled at the bottom of the library steps, one arm flung out, hand hidden beneath the tree, the other hand still clutching at his throat. A strand of fairy lights had been wrapped around his neck. From my spot by the door, I could see that the lights had been tightened with every loop. The third and final twist bit deeply into his skin. Gifford's face was half in shadow, half shining with the blues and greens of the fairy lights. I looked away quickly, but not before his bulging eyes and protruding tongue, illuminated by those evil colours, had burnt themselves on my memory. Guy knelt down and felt for a pulse. "He's dead," he said, and then his voice rose sharply. "For God's sake, someone unplug those lights." I rushed in and fumbled at the plug, pulling it loose, switching off those nightmare colours. Somehow, the scene looked worse now that the only light came from the doorway. The warm, golden yellow pooling across such horror lent it a ghastly air of normality, even domesticity, that was almost too much to bear. Turning away, I felt beside the door frame for the main light switch. The click was too loud for my ears, and a scream rose in my throat. I clamped my hand across my mouth and fought it down, only half successfully, for a strange cry leapt out of me, a sound I had never heard before, and hope to never hear again. "Good God," whispered Trevor Lawton. He was close enough for his breath to graze my neck, and I stumbled back against the fallen tree as I tried to get away from him. "Careful," he said, and he yanked me back by my arm. "There may be vital evidence." He strode past me and shifted the tree with his foot. "What is this?" Vernier pointed. "This. See? He clutches something in his hand." "Don't touch him. Don't touch anything." Guy put his hand out to stop Vernier and Lawton from going closer. He leant across and opened Gifford's hand. I don't know why, but I had been expecting the fingers to be stiff. It was too early, of course, for rigor mortis to have set in. But the softness, the skin, it was also vulnerable still. "Mon Dieu, what does it mean?" asked Vernier. "Where has it come from? And to whom does it belong?" Clutched in Ambrose Gifford's hand was the length of frayed crimson ribbon, missing from my window.